She was just translating my words, until I said something that made her blush. The diplomatic mishap, Theo Harrison had always prided himself on his linguistic abilities. As the chief communications specialist aboard the Earth Alliance starship, Horizon, his job was to prevent misunderstandings between humans and the diverse species they encountered. Until today, his record had been impeccable. "Remember, Harrison," Captain Laurel said, straightening her immaculate uniform as they prepared to enter the reception hall. "The Lumidari are our best chance at joining the Galactic Concord. Don't screw this up." "Yes, Captain. I've been studying their language patterns for weeks," Theo replied, adjusting his formal Navy uniform with its silver trim. The translation implant behind his ear felt unusually warm, a common side effect when programmed with a new language matrix. Captain Laurel gave him a skeptical look. "That's what you said before the Proxima incident." "That was different," Theo protested. "How was I supposed to know their word for trade agreement was one phoneme away from ritual combat?" The reception hall doors slid open, revealing an ethereal space transformed by the Lumidari delegation. Bioluminescent orbs floated near the ceiling, casting a dreamlike glow over the gathering. The Lumidari themselves were striking. Tall, willowy beings with violet skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Theo's attention immediately fixed on one particular delegate. Unlike her companions, who wore formal silver robes, she was dressed in a fitted garment of deep indigo that complemented her lavender skin. Delicate, luminescent patterns traced her arms and collarbone, pulsing gently with what Theo assumed was the Lumidari equivalent of a heartbeat. "That's Naira," Captain Laurel whispered, following his gaze. "Their junior cultural attaché. She'll be your primary contact during the negotiations." "Understood," Theo replied, suddenly very invested in the success of this diplomatic mission. The formal introductions proceeded with excruciating precision. Ambassador Valen, the Lumidari leader, spoke in measured musical tones while his delegation observed with serene expressions. Only Nira showed any animation, her iridescent eyes somewhere between silver and pale blue, taking in every detail of the human delegation with unconcealed curiosity. When they finally sat down to the ceremonial feast, Theo found himself strategically positioned across from Nira. Also present at their table were representatives from the Centauri Republic, a humanoid species known for their elaborate hairstyles and direct manner. "First time trying human cuisine?" Theo asked as Naira examined a plate of Earth delicacies. "Yes," she replied, her voice melodic with an accent that made standard sound like poetry. "We are most interested in understanding your nutritional preferences." Theo smiled. "Well, I'm equally curious about yours." The Centauri diplomat beside Theo, Ambassador Wren, pushed a plate of something gelatinous and pulsating toward Naira. "Try Centauri delicacy. Brings clarity of thought." Naira politely accepted a small portion, but as she attempted to consume it, her face contorted slightly. The gelatinous substance adhered to her utensil, stretching in an increasingly awkward manner as she tried to maintain diplomatic composure. Theo, seeing her distress and wanting to diffuse the tension, remembered a phrase he'd picked up during his language studies. A Lumidari merchant at the spaceport had used it when speaking to another Lumidari, and they'd both laughed warmly afterward. Perfect for breaking the ice, he thought. Leaning forward with what he hoped was a charming smile, Theo said in carefully practiced Lumidari, "Your luminescence increases most beautifully when you're challenged." The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Naira's violet skin flushed a brilliant magenta. Her eyes widened to impossible proportions, the silver-blue irises nearly eclipsing their almond shape. The Centauri delicacy fell forgotten from her utensil as she stared at Theo with an expression of absolute shock. The Lumidari delegation erupted in a chorus of musical gasps. Ambassador Valan rose to his feet, his normally serene face darkening to a dangerous deep purple. "How dare you?" he intoned, his melodic voice now discordant with outrage. Meanwhile, the Centauri diplomats were looking at Theo with newfound respect. Ambassador Wren slapped him on the back hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. "Human has courage. Good diplomatic strategy." Captain Laurel, who had witnessed the entire disaster from 2 tables away, closed her eyes briefly as if praying for patience. "Harrison," she muttered, approaching their table with the speed and determination of someone about to prevent an interstellar incident. "What the hell did you just say to her?" Theo's confusion was genuine. I just complimented her glow, I think." As Naira finally recovered, taking small sips from a crystal vessel provided by a concerned aide, her eyes locked with Theo's. There was something beyond embarrassment there. Perhaps a hint of intrigue beneath the mortification. Whatever he'd said, Theo realized with sinking certainty that his diplomatic career might have just ended before it properly began. And somehow, the fate of humanity's standing in the Galactic Concord now hung in the balance because of one misplaced compliment. "Ambassador Valan," Captain Laurel began, damage control mode fully engaged. "I assure you Specialist Harrison meant no offense. He propositioned the junior attaché in the most intimate manner possible," Valan hissed, luminescent patterns flaring across his skin. "We demand his immediate removal from these negotiations." "What?" Theo felt the blood drain from his face. I am not dismissing my best communications specialist over a misunderstanding," Captain Laurel declared, her weathered face set in stubborn lines. Over the next hour, the reception deteriorated into a diplomatic nightmare. The Lumidari delegation withdrew to one side of the hall, luminescent patterns communicating their distress more eloquently than words. The Centauri, finding the whole situation tremendously entertaining, suggested increasingly outlandish solutions. Finally, an elderly Lumidari approached, Mentor Selene, the delegation's cultural advisor. Her skin had faded to the palest lavender with age, and the luminescent patterns covering her were complex and intricate. "I must inform you," she announced solemnly, "that Specialist Harrison's statement has inadvertently initiated the Luminaria, an ancient bonding ritual. According to our most sacred traditions, he must either formally continue the process or face permanent exclusion from all Lumidari territories and alliances." Captain Laurel's expression would have been comical under different circumstances. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly. "Harrison needs to participate in some kind of Lumidari bonding ritual, or we can forget about joining the Galactic Concord." "Essentially, yes," Mentor Selene confirmed. Theo cleared his throat. "Captain, if I may, I'd like to speak with Junior Attaché Nira alone. Perhaps we can sort this out person to person." Captain Laurel studied him for a long moment. "Fine, but no more linguistic experiments, understood?" 20 minutes later, Theo found himself in one of the Horizon's observation lounges, waiting nervously. Stars streamed by outside the viewport, reminding him just how far from Earth he truly was. When the door slid open, Naira entered cautiously. Her magenta flush had faded, but her luminescent pattern still pulsed at an accelerated rate. "Specialist Harrison," she acknowledged stiffly. "Please call me Theo." He gestured to a seat. "I wanted to apologize for what I said. I had no idea what it actually meant." Nira sat down, her movements graceful despite her obvious discomfort. "Where did you learn that phrase?" "At the spaceport on Arcturus Station. I overheard a Lumidari merchant saying it to another Lumidari. They both laughed, so I thought—" He trailed off, realizing how foolish he sounded. To his surprise, Naira's lips curved into a small smile. That merchant was likely a bonding facilitator, what humans might call a matchmaker. The customer was probably seeking a life partner. "Oh." Theo felt his face heat up. "So I basically suggested we form a permanent bond in extremely explicit terms." "Yes." Her violet skin flushed slightly. "But I'm intrigued that you would attempt our language at all. Most humans don't bother." Theo leaned forward. "I find your culture fascinating, especially—" He hesitated, then decided honesty was his best approach. "Especially you." Their eyes met and something electric passed between them. Naira's flush deepened as her luminescent patterns briefly synchronized into a harmonious design before returning to their agitated state. "I've been told," I'm now involved in a diplomatic incident, Theo continued. Something called the Luminaria. What exactly is that? Nira's eyes widened. The Luminaria? But that's... She trailed off, looking both alarmed and intrigued. That's an ancient bonding ritual. Once initiated, it must be completed, or consequences follow. What kind of consequences? For you, permanent exclusion from Lumidari space and alliance. For me. She looked away. Certain social complications. Theo felt a weight settle in his stomach. I've really messed things up, haven't I? Perhaps not entirely, Nira said softly. The Luminaria has not been invoked in generations. Many of my people find our older traditions restrictive. Some of us have been studying human customs, admiring your adaptability. Really? Theo couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. Yes. Her gaze traveled over him in a way that made his pulse quicken. Humans are fascinating. Your emotional range, your capacity for understanding different perspectives, your physical forms. The air between them seemed to thicken. Theo became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how the starlight played across her luminescent patterns. Before he could respond, the ship's alarm system blared to life. Red emergency lights bathed the observation lounge. All personnel, to alert stations, Captain Laurel's voice announced over the comm. Unidentified vessel approaching, this is not a drill. Theo and Nira exchanged alarmed glances. Whatever was happening, their complicated diplomatic situation had just become the least of their problems. Beyond words, Theo and Nira raced through the horizon's corridors, emergency lights casting alternating shadows across their faces. Crew members rushed past them, shouting orders and status reports. What do you think is happening? Nira asked, her luminescent patterns pulsing rapidly with what Theo now recognized as anxiety. Not sure, Theo replied, but the Horizon's defenses are top-notch. We should be... They rounded a corner and collided with Captain Laurel, who was marching purposefully in the opposite direction. Harrison, there you are. Laurel's face was a thundercloud. Care to explain why a Vordak warship is hailing us and specifically requesting to speak with you? Theo's jaw dropped. A Vordak warship? Ma'am, I have no idea. It seems, Nira interjected, that news of the Luminaria has traveled faster than anticipated. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Laurel to the bridge. Commander Dex of the Vordak Imperium is demanding immediate communication. Laurel jabbed a finger into Theo's chest. You're coming with me. You too, Attaché Nira. Let's sort this mess out. The face that filled the main view screen on the bridge was unlike anything Theo had expected. Commander Dex of the Vordak had steel-gray skin with ridge-like protrusions along the jawline and forehead. 4 yellow eyes blinked independently at them, set in a face that seemed permanently carved into an expression of suspicious evaluation. Captain Laurel? The Vordak's voice rumbled through the speakers, oddly melodious despite their fearsome appearance. We understand you have initiated the Luminaria with the Lumidari. This interests us. Laurel stepped forward. Commander, Dex, with all due respect, the private cultural exchanges between Earth Alliance and the Lumidari Confederation are not... The Solarian Armada approaches, Dex interrupted, all 4 eyes blinking simultaneously. They have breached the outer rim. Their trajectory indicates they will reach both Lumidari and human territories within 30 solar cycles. The bridge fell silent. The Solarians were not a species. They were a legend, a nightmare, an ancient force that supposedly consumed entire star systems. That's impossible, Laurel breathed. The Solarians are a myth. Myth no more, Dex replied. Our long-range sensors detected their quantum signature. The awakening has begun. Ambassador Valan, who had joined them on the bridge, stepped forward. If what you say is true, Commander, then why come to us? The Vordak Imperium has always maintained neutrality in galactic affairs. Neutrality is a luxury of peacetime, Dex answered, mandibles clicking. The Solarians will consume us all if we stand divided. We propose alliance. Alliance? Captain Laurel repeated, disbelief evident in her voice. The Vordak have rejected every diplomatic overture for the past century. Circumstances evolve. Requirements change. All four of Dex's eyes focused on Theo and Nira. The Luminaria presents opportunity. 3 species bound through ancient rite. Powerful symbol. Effective deterrent. Theo felt all eyes on the bridge turn toward him and Nira. The luminescent patterns across her skin had formed into complex swirls that he couldn't interpret, but the slight trembling of her hand near his told him all he needed to know about her emotional state. "Commander," Theo spoke up, surprising himself, "are you suggesting that a bonding ritual between myself and junior attaché Nira could somehow form the basis of a 3-species alliance against the Solarians?" "Precisely," Dex confirmed. "Vordak tradition recognizes blood bonds above all treaties. Luminaria is equivalent, sacred, binding." Captain Laurel looked ready to explode. "This is completely unprecedented. We can't base interstellar military operations on a cultural misunderstanding between 2 individuals." "Can you not?" Ambassador Valen asked quietly. "For millennia, alliances have been forged through personal connections. Perhaps our ancestors understood something we have forgotten in our age of digital treaties and quantum-signed agreements." Over the next hour, representatives from all 3 species debated furiously. The Vordak insisted that the symbolic power of the Luminaria would unite their forces more effectively than any conventional treaty. The Luminary cultural experts confirmed that such a union would indeed be recognized as binding under their most ancient laws. Captain Laurel argued vehemently for a more traditional diplomatic approach. Throughout it all, Theo and Nira remained silent, occasionally exchanging glances that grew increasingly meaningful as the discussion progressed. Finally, Captain Laurel called for a recess. "Specialist Harrison and Junior Attaché Nira need time to discuss this privately. We'll reconvene in 2 hours." As the others filed out, Theo and Nira remained on the observation deck, the stars streaming by outside the viewport their only companions. "Well," Theo finally said when they were alone, "that wasn't how I imagined my first real diplomatic mission." "Progressing." Nira's lips curved into a small smile. "Humans have a talent for understatement." "Nira," Theo said seriously, taking her hands in his, marveling at how her luminescent patterns swirled more vigorously at his touch. "I won't let political pressure dictate what happens between us. Whatever we decide should be because we want it, not because 3 species are waiting for the results." Her violet skin flushed slightly. "This situation is certainly unexpected, but Theo, I have studied human physiology extensively." Her silver blue eyes met his. "Our species are remarkably compatible despite our differences." "You've researched this?" Theo asked, surprised. I'm a xenobiologist by training," she reminded him with a hint of amusement, "and I've been curious about humans. About you, specifically." The admission sent a wave of warmth through Theo's body. "I've been curious about you too," he confessed. "But the Luminaria, that's a lifetime commitment, not just a diplomatic arrangement." Nira's expression softened. "Among my people, forming a true bond is considered the greatest achievement one can attain. The fact that our bond would be unique, the first human Luminary union, makes it even more significant." "Our bond," Theo repeated, the words feeling strange yet right on his tongue. "You've really thought about this?" "Since the moment you first made your accidental proposition," she admitted, her luminescent patterns forming delicate, harmonious designs that seemed to reach toward him. "When you spoke those words, as intimate as they were, something inside me responded. Perhaps it was fate." Theo studied her face, seeing beyond the alien features to the person beneath, intelligent, curious, brave enough to consider something no one from either of their species had dared before. "I don't believe in fate," he said softly. "But I do believe in recognizing opportunities when they appear, however unexpected." He reached out tentatively, tracing a finger along one of her luminescent patterns. It brightened at his touch, leaving a trail of intensified light. "Oh," she breathed, the sound both startled and pleased. "What happens next in the Luminaria?" Theo asked, his voice low. There are 3 phases, Naira explained, her own voice husky. The proposition, which you accidentally completed, the understanding, where both parties acknowledge their compatibility, and finally, the illumination, where our bioluminescent patterns synchronize through intimate contact. And if we complete this ritual, it would truly help forge this alliance? Help protect both our peoples from the Solarians? Yes. Naira. Confirmed. The Vordak place enormous value on blood bonds and their equivalents. They would be honor-bound to uphold any alliance formed through the Luminaria. Theo nodded slowly, his decision crystallizing. Then I want to proceed, not for the alliance, though that's important, but because meeting you has been the most extraordinary experience of my life. I want to know more, understand more. About you. About us. Naira's luminescent patterns flared brilliantly, momentarily lighting the entire observation deck. You understand that the Luminaria cannot be undone? It is permanent. Some of the best decisions are, Theo replied with a smile. 2 hours later, they stood together before the assembled representatives of 3 species. Captain Laurel, Ambassador Valan, and Commander Dex watched with varying degrees of anticipation as Theo and Naira formally announced their decision. We will complete the Luminaria, Naira declared, her voice strong despite the magnitude of what they were undertaking. Not because we've been asked to, Theo added, but because we've found something worth exploring between us. If our bond can help secure peace and protection for our peoples, that's a worthy beginning. Commander Dex's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, the Vordak equivalent of approval. It is decided. When the ritual is complete, our 3 species will stand as one against the Solarian threat. As the political implications of their decision rippled through the gathering, Theo and Naira exchanged a private glance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, cultural differences, biological mysteries, the looming threat of an ancient enemy, they would face them together, their unexpected connection bridging worlds that had remained separate for millennia. Are you ready for this? Theo whispered as they prepared to depart for the ceremonial chamber, where the final phase of the Luminaria would take place. Naira's luminescent patterns formed perfect, concentric circles, the lumidari expression of absolute certainty. I have been ready since you first spoke those words to me, not knowing what they meant. Theo smiled, taking her hand. Sometimes the best communications are the ones we never intended to make. As they walked together toward their shared future, the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself approved of their unprecedented union, a cosmic liaison born from a simple misunderstanding and transformed into a beacon of hope for 3 civilizations facing darkness. Endi,